Tonight's story begins in a parlor, Boston, late 1800s. A woman named Leonora Piper sits for strangers. People arrive grieving. People arrive curious. People arrive with test questions hidden behind polite conversation. People arrive hoping the world is larger than it looks. Then the investigators arrive. Not believers with candles, but researchers with notebooks. Piper becomes one of the most studied mediums of the era. The Society for Psychical Research takes the case seriously. William James takes the case seriously. Sitting, Sittings are arranged. Names are concealed. Sitters are brought in under assumed identities. Precautions become part of the ritual. In some accounts, investigators even put detectives on the family to see if information is being gathered the ordinary way. Those accounts say nothing useful is found. No suspicious errands, no cemetery visits, no secret correspondences. The room becomes a collision point between the human need for meaning and the human demand for method. And this is where folklore becomes sharper than rumor, because the Piper story is not one dramatic night. It is a long accumulation of nights, and it includes concrete scenes that people keep repeating because the scenes have teeth. One scene that enters the legend is not about a ghost at all, it's about an object. An inventor named Shaw had to get a signature from a man who had disappeared. Shaw finally found the man in a cheap boarding house on the New Jersey coast, collapsed into alcoholism and delirium treatments. The account says the man lay in his bed, picking at the sheets and at his own body as if trying to remove crawling vermin, hour after hour. When the man briefly recovered enough to sign, Shaw used his fountain pen to guide the weak hand and get the signature. Shaw then traveled on and, during an overnight stop in Washington, attended a public demonstration where audience members were invited to send small objects to the stage. Shaw sent up the fountain pen. The account says Piper touched it, fell into a light trance, and immediately began moaning and picking at her own clothing and body in a close intimidation of the delirium tremors sufferer, then recoiled and said she had never been so uncomfortable in her life. Shaw's point was simple. No one in that room knew what that pin had been used for, and Shaw had told no one. That moment became part of Piper folklore because it felt like a direct hit on a private event. Another scene, the one that becomes the spine of her case, is the arrival of a communicator calling himself JP, connected to Page Payham, a man who had met Piper once under an alias, then died in 1892. A month after the death, a sitter comes under a false name, and the communicator does something the accounts emphasize again and again. The communicator identifies itself, then describes the sitter's real name, then starts naming mutual friends as if picking up an interrupted relationship. Then comes a moment people cite as a test inside the story. A sitter holds up a pair of studs and asks who gave them. The communicator says the studs belong to Pelham and describes a chain of handing lean after death that the sitter claims not to know. In the account, that chain is later confirmed through family actions. That scene is repeated in retellings because it is a clean, a question, an object, a claim, and later a verification. And the case does not stop at one sitter. The accounts describe Pelham's friends being brought in, some reluctant, some skeptical, some simply disturbed by the idea. In one sitting, the communicator's voice is described as so familiar in tone that a friend recognizes it immediately and reacts with fear. In other cities, the communicator shifts into fast writing, producing private pages, even pushing the investigator away when something is marked private, as if the performance is trying to preserve intimacy rather than impress an audience. There's also a technical detail that makes the story feel less like theater and more like a strange machine. In later reports, Piper's trance communication increasingly uses automatic writing. The setup is described with paper stacked, pencils ready, and the entranced Piper's head turned away, while the hand writes rapidly as sheets are removed and replaced. In some sittings, reports say two streams run at once. One personality speaks through the voice, and another writes through the hand on a completely different subject, like two rooms lit in the same house. This is why the Piper case becomes folklore. Not because the story resolves, it never resolves cleanly. Some investigators describe years of scrutiny and testing that persuade them something unusual is happening. Others argue that mediumship can be built from suggestion, cueing, fishing, and the subtle ways human beings leak information. Later critics, including psychologists, frame the case in terms of subconscious process and performance rather than spirit. The same case becomes a mirror, showing people what they come to the table to find. That tension is the heart of a modern mediumship. Not just the question of what is real, but the question of what is responsible. If a person is grieving, comfort matters, but so does truth. If a person is desperate, hope matters, but so does discernment. If a person is searching, mystery matters, but so does ethics. So when we talk about mediumship today, the conversation changes the moment testing enters the room, because testing forces the same ancient question in modern language. What happens when cues are removed? What happens when conditions tighten? What happens when the only thing left is the medium, the sitter, and the information? That is why tonight's guest fits this opening. Angelina Diana is a medium whose work has intersected with research settings. On the Afterlife Science page, Angelina states partitioned as a research medium with the Veritas Research Program at the University of Arizona, participation in mediumship research with the University of Virginia, Decision of Perceptual Studies, and passing a Windbridge Institute screening process while not going on to do experiments there. So tonight is not about circus energy. It is not about vague claims. It is about mediumship, grief, science, discernment, and what it means to bring something like this into the real world with both compassion and structure. So, without further ado, uh, Angelina, welcome to Folklore After Dark.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. So the reason why stories like Leonardo Piper's endure is because the pressure behind them never disappears. People still grieve. People still look for signs. People still want to know if anything meaningful can come through under limits, under control, and under real conditions. What do you think about the story that I went over tonight?
Well, it's interesting because Medium Piper was, someone famous within the scientific world very early on. And William James concluded, as I recall, that a lot of her information, all evidential, was mostly through psychic work. So there's a difference between being a psychic and a medium, even though there's some things that she did pick up on. For instance, with the gentleman and the pen, she said she had these feelings that were, not fun or any, didn't feel good. When you feel energy between two living people, you could pick up on things that they've gone through, or empathy, or sensations that they might be going through in their life. So communication between humans to human are more psychic. With mediumship, it is with how science would call it. They call them discarnates, which I'm not too fond of, but they call them discarnates. And when modern day science works, the controls, as you mentioned earlier, and things around it provide, I think, more of an evidential basis that there is a difference between, say, the psi theory or psychic work and working alongside those that have passed on. So I think while Medium Piper was a very evidential psychic, and she might have had moments of maybe sensing the other side, I think William James might have been a little skewed in wanting to disprove her. And although he couldn't disprove the fact that she was picking up on psychic energy or energy between two humans, alongside working with Gary Schwartz, with the Veritas program, and working with the University of Virginia. I'm also a certified medium, the first certified medium with the Forever Family Foundation. They work really hard on deciphering the difference between, say, are you picking up on thought or empathetic feeling with a physical human being versus those that have crossed over. And the distinction that they use, which one of my most favorite one was a triple blind study, which they completely remove seeing the person, which takes away the idea that I'm getting cues from them. And also the scientists on the third part of the triple blind study, they enter the conversation and start having a conversation with the discarnate, asking questions to those that have passed and what the sensitive is picking up on. And what they have found is that even though I'm not a scientist, I can't go into the numbers like a scientist would. But when you work with someone like a scientist who is skeptical and not cynical, as I kind of sense William James was, slightly cynical. There's a big difference, I think. In my practice, I won't work with cynical people. I'll work with skeptical people. But scientists really hone in on evidence. Like, for example, I could work with someone and say, I'm sensing a man here. He's got a J name, like Jonathan. He makes me feel like he's heavy in the chest and he had heart issues. And the person, yes, I understand that. And he's also making me feel like he passed after being sick for 3 months. And I sense he's a very analytical person because he's showing me numbers. Yes, and the scientist will go, well, that's interesting. They're okay, there's some evidence there. But however, what they do, which I absolutely love, and I incorporate it in my practice, is, for example, I'll give you a sample reading that a scientist would love to them, of which it proves an afterlife. I was working with this woman who said I could share her name, but not her name, but the experience. She had unfortunately had one of the worst losses. She lost his son. And the son came through and validated a lot of things of how he passed, his personality, he was creative, a lot of things. And at the very end of the reading, he said, oh, and I have a beautiful white dog here. He's about medium size and he passed around 13. And she looked at me confused. She goes, we've never had dogs. And I said, well, there's a dog with him. She's going, I don't understand that. We are not animal people, and neither was he. And I said, well, I give all the information I get, and when science looks at this, they'd rather have you on the things that you say no. They want you to go back and check, because this is what someone who passed has learned, which proves that they're in another dimension and they've learned something about the afterlife. She said, okay. I'm happy with the reading, but I don't understand the dog. I said, okay. The next day, I get a text from her with a picture of the dog. And she goes, I know who the white dog is. And I said, who's the white dog? She's going, the day I buried my son, my friend from California came in, and she had just put down her dog the day before. She didn't tell me, but as my son was being buried, she said to her dog, go to him. All right. Now, science would look at this and go, that kind of proves an afterlife because this wasn't nothing. Her mother had no knowledge of this. But someone from the other side is coming through saying, there's a white dog with me.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like how science looks at it.
Right, so there's a misconception that mediumship has been totally disproven by science, where in fact there's all these experiments going on with all these universities where the conclusion is, okay, maybe there's actually something to this. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Not as a scientist, but I can tell
Uh,
you, but I can tell you that um, there are wonderful books called The Afterlife Experiments, and uh, Dr. Julie Beischel, who runs Windbridge, and she studied under Dr. Gary Schwartz, has written many books that show that there is a scientist generally won't say, yes, there's an afterlife, although Dr. Gary Schwartz got very close to saying that because of the evidence he found. But most scientists won't come out exactly saying it because they'll lose their funding. So there's actually a political reason. Behind closed doors, some of them, and I won't mention names, will say there is something here. There is an afterlife. Dean Radin, who's a wonderful scientist, will put it more in scientific terms of different dimensions and things like that in his book. But what science does is they look at percentages and numbers. And when you look at, and again, I can't speak to the numbers off the top of my head, you'll have to forgive me, but they will look at mediums fall within an 89 to 92% percentile of blind reading, of having accuracy, that there are discarnates among us. I mean, that's how they speak, so that's the best that I can speak because I don't want to speak for the scientists because that's their work.
are you are you at all aware of how they pull test subjects? Because there are a lot of non-mediums claiming to be mediums who say they could do it.
Right.
Especially with the internet now, there's even more, I would say, than ever before.
That's why the Forever Family Foundation is a wonderful organization. They test hundreds of mediums I was the first one in 2005, and hundreds of mediums yearly, maybe even more than that, and they only have 30 on their list. And
Oh,
there's a reason for that, because
mm-hmm.
they do is they have a pool of sitters who know how to discern, because they're trained sitters, that's what they call them. And they know how to discern the difference between someone who's pulling up psychic information and someone who's pulling up mediumship information. And as they're doing a reading, in the beginning when they did it, by the way, they did them with sitters in person and the medium there. Now they do it through Zoom. And they would be in a situation such as this, where a medium first would have to go through applying to go through the certified mediumship test, and also answering certain questions that would indicate, well, how do you do a reading? And I've seen some of these earlier in the day. And they say, well, I go on Google. No, no. Or how do you get a client? Like if you go to my website and someone fills out information, I ask for a first name only. That's it.
There's some psychics that actually think that is psychic ability.
No, it's not.
I,
It isn't.
but
It isn't psychic ability. And the beautiful thing about the Forever Family Foundation is that when they finally allow someone to go through the process of sitting with a sitter, it's only yes or no. That's all they get. Yes, and they don't even know who they're sitting with. They don't know. It's not like they've drummed up this sitter from their client list. So it's a very, to me, when I wanted to be a volunteer of the Forever Family Foundation, and I went through the original certification 6 times so they could refine it. I don't want to brag, but I passed it each time, and
I,
and they're very particular because we are dealing with people who are grieving, And they even have workshops for the bereaved, because there's a difference between, here's your grief, which you're dealing with rumination of the mind, and grief is normal, you can't fix normal. But then you also have, everyone has a spirit, and that
Mm-hmm.
ability to sense your own loved one. And so the foundation, who also works with science, there's science and mediumship, um, really works hard on that discernment of, when you sit down with a medium, what is, are you going to look for the evidence, not just the emotional, I've got a man behind you who's touching your shoulder, so it, to me, if there's anyone listening here, let's say they're skeptical, which they have every right to be. If you're looking to go on a journey, there's nothing wrong with me. I'd rather sit with a skeptical person.
No, no. In my group, there's no
Good.
skeptics
No,
here.
no, but I
I
appreciate
understand.
skeptics. What, cynical people, like I
Mm.
said, and I won't read cynical, but I appreciate someone who comes in who's cynical, because you have the other aspect too of someone who's desperate and grieving, and they'll say yes to everything. And I don't want that. And when I sense someone is grieving, I say, I need you to be skeptical here. Be tough on me. If something doesn't make sense, say, I don't understand that, because my job is to go back and be sure that I'm hearing, feeling, sensing, tasting and smelling things that are evidential to the person who wants to speak. So getting back to the root of your question, you're right. There are way too many psychics and mediums who claim to be that, and they don't understand the scientific viewpoint and the spiritual viewpoint of how important it is to respect not only the person grieving, but we're representatives of those that have passed over, and representing them with ethics, and also in a very evidential way. And then underneath that, putting the love and the personality, what that person did for a living. So if you go to the Forever Family Foundation website, you'll see certified mediums that had to go through quite a jungle of evidence to be sure that they're working from a viewpoint of, my life is busy. I don't have time to Google anything, let alone sit there and try to Google clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that the Forever Family Foundation has done a great job at discernment for mediums, and also discernment of scientists who really are not wanting to lift mediums up as gods, but also wanting to search for, is there survival of consciousness? Is there an afterlife, paradisio, or heaven?
And so, how many of the people brought into the Forever Family Foundation would you say, I mean, just for the testing, end up being not being able to do anything? How many people end up just being tested as being psychic? And how many, as far as percentages go, and how many actually pass the mediumship test?
Well, like I said, I think there's the person to speak to is Bob Ginsberg, who started the
Mm,
foundation. He's got those numbers, and but what I would say to you is, since 2005, so we're talking 26 years of hundreds of mediums applying. If you go on their site right now, there's only 30 mediums. I think that's
mhm,
a good percentage to look at. And they don't test whether someone is psychic. What they test is the sitters are trained to be from the viewpoint, and again, Bob is the person to talk to on this, but of the viewpoint of, I already know this person isn't a medium because they're speaking in psychic terms. um, they're not validating an individual here. Again, he could speak to that more. So they don't have the discernment of they're psychic or they're a medium. It's, they're not a medium, even though they might have some psychic ability. Which psychic ability? I'm a psychic and a medium. Not all
mm.
psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychic. So the discernment of the sitters are to actually be sure that who is considered certified can give an evidential mediumship reading. And there's different kind of mediums too. So I would say, from a layman's viewpoint, looking at the foundation, hundreds of mediums times 26. So that's 2,600 mediums, let's say. Did I do my math right? I don't know. I'm not a mathematician. But only 30 passed so far. To me, that's a great discernment.
That's interesting. There's actually clinical trials for healers happening right now too.
Yes, I've
I
heard
have a
that.
friend doing that, and it's going well. And
Very important.
there was a there's another. Well, he actually started. It's Charlie Goldsmith.
Hmm.
He started an application to test healers, and using the same blind test, he has a big backer for it. And
Hmm.
he was telling me the same thing. It's
Yeah.
like only like a small percentage of people are getting through.
Yeah.
My concern is it with that is since he kind of distanced himself from the spiritual community for I'd say obvious reasons, he doesn't really he hasn't he's never interacted with anyone else before. And the way energy works in this way is if someone works in that system and starts healing people through an app or something double blind, the energy from someone who has the baseline ability spreads through that system. And when someone else is doing the healing, they're actually getting the healing or the energy. It's actually shamanship. It's not energy healing.
Oh, it's
And
interesting.
and and that energy works on them. So it's a little compromised, but I mean, at least it's something. But
Yeah.
if it's interesting seeing the similarities between it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's only maybe like I think he had thousands of people sign up, and um, they considered placebo effect,
Mm.
and it was done through percentages, and yeah, very few people got through.
Yeah. I believe.
Um, and like I said, it's not energy healing. I try to he's not even aware because he was born with it. He didn't develop it. It is shamanship. It's shamanism, which is the use of spirits to ascend and heal people.
Sure.
It's very ancient type of
Yeah.
tradition.
Hmm.
So no, it's interesting hearing about it, and which actually it drew me to you. And it's like, oh, I want to interview this person. And I had a mediumship instructor or
Oh,
teacher
cool.
too, where I trained with, who's very, very good.
Well,
She's not
there's
she never went certified, but I learned a lot from her. I just kind of went a different way because I started learning different things.
yeah.
Um, yeah, go ahead.
Well,
I don't want to take the time.
there's a no, no, there's a medium in our certification program who is incredible. Her name is Janet Mayer, and she would be someone I think you'd love to talk to too as well. All of the mediums are wonderful, but she had an experience when she was taking a yoga class where she started speaking another language. And for many, many years, this would happen. And she finally got someone to interpret it. And someone, she has to tell her story, but she found out that it's an old shamanistic language.
Yes.
It's so intriguing.
I had
So,
an apprentice who found herself doing that.
oh,
There's two types of shamanistic healing. There's a very deeper level that gets to the inner part of the energetic bodies and pulls things out from there. And there's the more medically inclined type, like the one I do,
that's interesting.
that pulls stuff out that connects to the physical body that causes all kinds of like damage, sickness, and pain. But her method, I know two people. Um, she she would go into verses from ancient Maya and a few other places. When she would work, she would cut off the audio and do it remotely because it would embarrass people. Or, I mean, it scared people, not embarrass people, but it scared people.
Oh,
I try to tell her not to do that because we need to get people used to this sort of thing, and people could, and that language can actually be verified eventually. But
Yeah,
she ended up quitting because she didn't want the pressure of being able to do what she was
that,
doing, and she just
that's tough.
that's just how it is. And a lot of people with that ability, because shamanistic perception is different from mediumistic perception, because you see the deeper realities, levels of reality. It's really hard to deal with for a lot of folks.
I bet. I bet.
So, when did you start doing what you're doing? How did you
Well,
notice that you have, or when did you notice that you have this ability?
it happened later on in life for me. I personally believe that even though people are drawn to different physical things in life, sometimes you're drawn to other things that lead to your purpose. And I believe everyone has a spirit. So depending on your environment and depending what philosophical viewpoint you grew up in, you can actually scare yourself out of the abilities. Um, so when I was a young girl, my grandmother used to, my mother, who's in heaven, was Polish and French, and so my babcia used to read me with a regular deck of playing cards. And she would sit there and tell, eerily be very accurate as a young girl. And it would scare my mother. So I would go home and she'd make me do the rosary. So I had this dichotomy in my childhood where there was fear but belief. Even though my
Mhm.
mother was a very open minded woman, she kind of gave that fear to me. So I used to have, do you know what delirium is? You'd wake up in the
Mhm.
middle of so I would always have these little attacks in the middle of the night and wake up when I was in sixth grade. And one morning, in the middle of the night, one of these such experiences, I said to my mother, Hartford, I live in Connecticut, so Hartford is caving in. Hartford is caving in. And my mother would always, try to soothe me. And I woke up in the morning and I'd always know when I had such an attack. But my mother looked at me, she goes, "You remember what you said last night?" And I said, "I don't." And she turned on the television, and the Hartford Civic Center roof had caved in. And so I had somewhat of a vision that Hartford was caving in, from a sixth grader's viewpoint. And she didn't make me feel fearful, but she told me, we need to get you some help as far as calming you down at night. These things, you'll never get a good night's sleep. So I kind of put fear around it myself and really didn't rediscover my abilities until it was probably like 1998, where I was a newscaster in radio, and the morning guy said to me, "Hey, let's get some psychics on the show. They make the phones ring, And I was like, "Oh, my grandmother used to read, don't talk about that. You have to be credible on the air." Like I was in news, we had to be credible on the air. And but I started to talk to these mediums and psychics off the air, and I was very curious. I noticed a pattern, with my newsy mind, like, "Boy, you ask too many questions, but you don't. Like I'm more interested in you. Like, how'd you get that information?" And I started to study it for myself personally. And then, just out of curiosity, I said, "You know what? I think I'm going to just read other people to see if this is for real." And 6 months later, people were asking me for more readings. This was by 2001. And my heart, if I had really invested in my own psychic ability, my grandmother had passed at that time and I was starting to get signs from her. I said, "You know what? I get up in the morning at 4 o'clock. I do the news by 5, and by 8 o'clock, I'm on the road to drive to Long Island, which is 3 hours away, to do psychic fairs." And that was more important to me. So I decided to make a decision to say, "You know what? This in my psychic heart feels more like my life's work. I'm going to start doing this." And I said to my guides, if this stuff, I'm only going to do this if it helps people. The second it stops helping people, I'm done. And I've never looked back. It just seems like I've grown, and I've been doing this now for 25 years.
And what did you do before this?
Well, I was in broadcasting in the 90s. I did morning shows and news and traffic reports and had my own weekend show called New England Love Songs. I mean, I did it all. Before that, I was a aerobic instructor, and I was a dental assistant when I was in my teens, in my early 20s. So I look back on that journey and I realized that when I was a dental assistant, I didn't necessarily like putting my fingers in people's mouths, but I liked soothing them. When I was an aerobic instructor, I loved transformation. When I was in broadcasting, I was very enamored by the fact my voice can invisibly go into the air and hit a radio and make noise. All those three things I use in my work today. So I often say to people who are curious about what should I do in my life, I look back to what you're drawn to. Titles mean nothing. It's what you're drawn to. I was drawn to helping people. I use that today. I like soothing people. I, I did that in dentistry, transformation in aerobics. It was more than just do 50 push-ups. You have to envision who you want to be. Same thing with broadcasting. When we want to reach the other side, when we want to feel energy, see it, taste it, smell it, depending if you're doing a mediumship reading or working psychically, we have to look at just as you being a healer. I'm sure you understand this, and so do your listeners, that your body is an instrument, and there's certain points in your body that you can sense things, and then and slow down the process, and then interpret them. You know, the human brain works like a computer, and it's so fast. If we can all slow down that brain, just like, you know, radio waves go through the air invisibly, and then there's a sound. It's no different, I'm sure. You can only speak to your healing abilities because I'm not a healer, you are. But from a mediumship and psychic viewpoint, we have an instrument, a radio, so to speak, that we can receive from
Hmm.
and then use our physical body to say, I sense this, or I hear this, or I feel that. All the things I've done have led me to my life's work.
What would you say was your first instance when you thought, I really helped that person? I didn't, and it surprised you.
Oh, and it surprised me.
Yes. And it surprised you. Or without surprise, either one. Whatever
Well,
you like to share.
I'd have to say one that comes, well, there's two that comes to mind, but the one that was because I started out just psychically. And then I started taking classes, but really working in my own personal life to figure out what is this ability, doing psychic fairs so I can really hone in on my psychic ability. And then I was doing a session once and I sensed a woman coming along with her and validated some things. But that's when I knew, oh, I think I'm being called to do that. But that didn't surprise me as much as the first time I was out on Long Island and I was doing private readings individually, which later, and I don't know anything about anyone, but later on I found out they were family, but they wanted individual readings. So the mother, later on I find out it's the mother, and she comes through and people are being validated, but later on, who I found out was her living daughter, came through, sitting in front of
Mhm.
me, and her sister came through to validate a couple of things. And the last thing she said was, oh, I want to talk about the 7 journals. Now, I should backtrack a little bit. Have you ever been to the East Coast?
I have.
Okay, so I grew up in Connecticut, and there's a big difference between someone in Connecticut getting a reading or a Long Islander getting a reading. They want it quick, they want it fast, they don't want any BS. Tell it to me like it is, lady. You know, like there's and Long Island is a very spiritual place, in my opinion, because it's an island, and there a lot of well-known mediums have come from Long Island, because I think there's just it's almost like it's sheltered, and there's a belief there, but a need for having it yesterday and having it very accurate, which is a great training ground. It's perfect. To me, that's a perfect client. But this particular daughter of the mother was very cynical. I
Hmm.
didn't recognize it in the beginning of my development, but she wasn't hearing anything until the middle of the session, where there was things she wanted to hear about her sister who had passed, even though I knew that those things that didn't make sense to her, spirit would take care of it. But so I'm being patient, and so the last thing her sister said was, "Oh, I want to talk about the 7 journals." And she went, "Lady, you were so good up until then, and now you're talking about fakaka things that I don't understand." And I said, "I appreciate your passion because you're grieving, and grieving is normal, and you can't fix normal, and you have every right to be frustrated," knowing in my mind that that's every Long Islander, but that's okay.
Hmm.
But I said, but I want to say to you that there has been evidence, right? Yes. And there has been some emotional personality things that she brought out that you sense are your sister. She goes, yes. I go, I can't cure grief right now. But what I want to tell you is keep the 7 journals in your mind and find out what they mean. I don't know what, now I have to tell you, Spirit was guiding me on that one. Because I'm like, and I left that session and go, wow, where did that come from? It
Hmm.
came from Spirit. I might be a smart girl, but that's Spirit talking. So a week later, I get a call from a voice I recognized. The mother had a very gravelly voice, like very gravelly. "Hi, can I speak to Angelina?" I go, "This is Angelina." She goes, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "You read my family last week." I go, "Out on Long Island?" She goes, "Yes, 4 of us individually." I go, "Ah, yes. You read me first, but my daughter didn't come through." I said, "I'm so sorry." She goes, "No, but I want to tell you about the impact you had on my living daughter." I said, "What?" I go, "If any impact there was, it was from Spirit, not me." She's going, "Well, I go, "What happened?" She's going, "Well, you could probably guess that my daughter was hurting," and she was very cynical. I go, "I know which one you're talking about." And she said, "At the very end, you said something about 7 journals." And I said, "Aha, yes, I did. I remember." She's going, "Let me tell you what happened." I go, "Okay." I went over my late daughter's mother-in-law's house because it was Christmas time, and we were putting up the Christmas tree. So we went up to the attic and we found 7 journals that my daughter wrote when she was sick with cancer. One to her husband, one to her living daughter, and then 4 to the 4 of us, and then another one to a friend of hers. She wrote 7 journals to each and every one of us. And I said, "Well, that's beautiful." And she's going, "Thank you." I go, "Thanks, Spirit." She goes, "But the impact that it's had on my living daughter, it's really helped her." And I really do believe that when someone's called to do this work, to be humble and recognize that everything you say isn't yours, it's from
Hmm.
them, but to trust it. Even though if you sound like you're fakaka driving somebody crazy, you have to trust it. And that's hard. I feel for your colleague who couldn't handle the pressure. That's tough because it is very pressurizing. But trusting Spirit the whole time, no matter what, that everyone's journey will eventually catch up, hopefully, to take something from the session and it helps them. And I think that that's one of 2 examples that I can think of that in the beginning of my journey doing this that really had an impact on me, to trust Spirit. I once had an English medium say that to me. That stuck with me too. I used to take classes from English mediums, and this one English medium named Anne Burbridge, out of 500 people that, well, 550, no, maybe there were 250 people that were in the audience. She pegged me out. She went, "Angelina, trust Spirit." That has stuck with me. I can't get that out of my head, but it's very true.
That's
You know?
very interesting.
Yeah.
So, have you ever had to refuse a client because you mentioned cynicism can
Mm-hmm.
be like something that you don't want to mess with? Has
Mm-hmm.
there ever been an instance of that, or what
Yeah.
would make
Yeah.
someone um, be refused by you?
Well, it's not that it's refused. I think
Well, they're not ready, right?
well, there's, well, no, there's three that come to mind, I would have to say. One time somebody showed up in my office inebriated, and I can't work with someone inebriated. Because they're going to either be overly emotional or not understand the process, and I'm not being fair to the person grieving if I take advantage of the fact that they don't have all of their senses there. Number two, a gentleman came to my office. He said, I actually rearranged my office because of him. He sat down, and the first spirit to come through was a dog. And the dog said to me, he poisoned me. And I looked at him and I said, I have a dog coming through that says you poisoned the dog. He goes, yeah, we were moving. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to refund your money. I can't go on with the session, maybe because I'm shocked and can't believe. And I even said, which was out of something I shouldn't have said, I go, even though I didn't know where he lived, I go, I know where you live. I hope you don't have an animal now. He goes, no, we don't have any animals. And I
Oh,
refused him. And the third person was very challenging in the beginning. When I open a session, I spend maybe 3 minutes explaining how I work because every medium works differently, and how the sections of the reading is broken off into so that they understand the flow. And then I said, are you ready? Are you ready for the session? He goes, well, I have a bunch of questions for you first. And I said, well, the only questions I would entertain would be based on how I work so that you feel clear about the session. And he says, no, I have some challenging questions. And I said, well, I don't want to be challenged. I want to have an open spiritual agreement between us. You want to be read, or you want your loved ones to come through. I'm honored that you're trusting me with this opportunity because you don't know me, but I don't want to feel challenged. If you're going to challenge me because you don't believe in mediums, he goes, yeah, that's right. And I said, then I'd like to refund your money because I don't need to be challenged. You have a right to be skeptical, but not cynical. So here's your money. And that's why I explain how I work in the beginning, because I don't want to go through 50 minutes of reading and then someone's cynical. Um, I'm wasting time where I could be helping someone else. So I have refused.
so my teacher, she has a story when I was training with her. She's a Native American woman.
Oh,
She's
cool.
sort of YouTube famous now, which is
Cool.
good to watch. Um, she had a client once. Now, the way she works, she closes her eyes and she talks for however long the session is, then goes, do you have any questions? But at the end of this one, she goes, you need to change. And like, and then he comes like, I want my money back, give everything back. She knew he was cynical. She didn't even know that she wanted to take him, but she ended up doing it anyway. Who knows if it helped him or not?
Yeah.
But I see where you're coming from because at the end of the day, they're going to keep challenging you with the
Yeah.
information that you give them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to me, there are people that are going to be cynical, and I often say hurting people do hurting things. So it's not like I'm hateful towards them or I don't like them. I actually feel sorry for them that they want to come in and be very challenging. What I can never understand on the few rare occasions that people have done that is, why are they wasting their time? What are they going to do with that information? Are they going to go out and damage me or damage mediumship? I highly doubt it. So I'm not threatened by them. I just feel like I'm very regimented in how I schedule my time. Today's an off day. Today's an energy day. Today's a day I need to meditate for clients. Today's a day I need to meditate with my own grief. Like, I purposefully I don't go into the grocery store and read other people's dead people. Like, I don't waste my abilities that way because I want to be 100% ready to represent spirit. So I feel more like other clients that really want to be helped are being cheated because I could use that energy on someone that really wants to have that spiritual space, opened up for them, even though that I feel everyone can open it up for themselves. But, that I think that's the reason why I refuse. It's like, why should I waste? It's almost, I don't know, it's like a brain surgeon trying to do heart surgery. It doesn't make sense. Like, they're not going to help anything, you're wasting
Mhm.
your abilities. I don't know how else to explain it.
And you're pretty busy too. You have a lot of clients, don't you?
Well, I don't consider myself
Oh,
busy. I consider myself fruitful.
I
Um,
see.
I have seasons where it's not as busy. Um, or that's why I use the word fruitful, because when you have an opportunity to help someone, it's wonderful to be fruitful. And then I believe spirit says you need a break.
Mm,
You're going too fast here. I
yes.
once had a colleague. She's now in heaven. She was talking to me. She's not a medium, but she works within helping others through the foundation. And she said to me, Angelina, how come you're not booked 2 years in advance? Like that, and I'm like, well, I don't want to be booked two years in advance, first of all. And I really just appreciate the fact that I've had steady work for 25 years. And if I can finish my point, because she said to me, well, why don't you just meditate on getting more clients? I go, meditate on more people having death in their life? I don't think so. Uh, you
Yeah, for
it's almost,
sure.
I believe spirit brought me to this, and they're going to honor me with whom I'm supposed to help, in the fashion of how I'm supposed to help them, in the time frame that I'm supposed to help them. I believe in spirit's timing. And after your question, I can give you an example of that. Did you have a question?
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I tend to get too
No, you're
passionate
good.
at work. But I had this woman come to me, and in the time that we were together, her son came through. And she said, remind me, I have a story for you after we're done, because I told her I didn't, in the beginning, I don't want any information. Um, and so the session ended, her son came through, and she said, I said, you wanted me to remind you of the story? And she goes, yes. I want to tell you how I came to you and how just walking in the door, I got validation that you were the person I was supposed to see. And I said, excuse me, and I said, okay. She goes, well, I got 3 recommendations. You were one of them. And I put the 3 names of the mediums on the table. And I put my hand over the names, and I asked my son, which one should I go to? Which one should I go to? And my hand kept on going to yours. And I said, that's remarkable. I go, that's beautiful that you have that you're, through your heavy grief, you have that connection with your son. And she goes, I doubted it at first. I go, of course, the mind's always going to doubt. She goes, but I said to him as I pulled your name and your information from the paper that I wrote on, I said, when I get there, tell me she's the right one. And I said, that's because for someone in grief to have the forethought to do that, that's remarkable, especially after losing a child, because people can't breathe after losing a child. I said, that's remarkable. And she goes, but don't you want to know what it was? And I said, absolutely. She's going, come here. And now, if you come to my office, it's attached to my house, and it's separate little building attached to my house, and I have a big parking lot in the back, and my property is surrounded with arborvitaes,
All right.
the back and the side. But when we moved into this house 4 years ago, there was a small section where my property line wasn't marked off, so I planted 3 small arborvitaes. She goes, those 3 arborvitaes, what made you plant those? I go, Well, 3 years ago, and she's going, 3 years ago, that's when my son died. I go, oh. And she pulled up a picture of her son's tattoo, which had
Mm.
three small arborvitaes representing himself, his mom, and his sister. So when she pulled up, that was the first thing she saw. And I believe, my heart of hearts, I believe our loved ones that have passed have the ability, like, he didn't make me plant those three arborvitaes. He saw the three mediums and he looked around to say, what can I show my mom? And it brought her to myself. Um, so I believe that spirit has the ability to do that.
Now, how do you work? Do you receive images or do you hear things clairaudiently? How do you work? We talked about Piper, and I guess she was a type of automatic writer who worked with some type of guide.
Hmm.
What do you do, or how
Well,
do you do it?
when I work with someone mediumistically, it's slightly different than I work with someone psychically. So when I work with someone psychically, I feel, hear, and see things. For myself, I can't necessarily smell and taste their future. There are some psychics that can do that in missing murder cases. They can smell where the body is. They can taste the last food the perpetrator ate. But with psychic work, I work with someone's soul path, and I'll feel, hear, and see what happened to them 3 months ago, what could possibly come into their path three months to a year from now. Currently, what are they feeling now spiritually in their spirit versus how the mind is beating up against that. So I see, hear, and feel with psychic work. With mediumship, it's all the five senses. And they come to me, the senses are activated by how the person was in life. If they were a very creative person, I might feel them more in the beginning, and then they'll make me see things that they created. If they're a very, let's say, a very intellectual person, or they were a wordsmith, I might hear them first. If they were a cook, I might hear them and smell some of their food. So how they use, spirit uses my psychic senses according, and it kind of identifies who that person is. When I first started to study, I was only doing psychic work, and I'd be very clairsentient, I'd feel. And then I remember driving out to Long Island, I'd be like, I want to work on the other senses, guides. Help me work on the other senses. So the first person sat down, I couldn't feel a darn thing. I started sweating. I didn't understand. Why aren't I feeling anything? I went, oh, yeah, be careful what you ask for. Okay, what am I hearing and seeing? So it's almost like my guides went, you're not going to feel anything. You asked for it. And then I started to feel, see, and hear and see things more. And then when mediumship came into my life, it kind of, a light bulb went off. Oh, I'm feeling that because that person's that kind of a person, but I'm seeing this because that person is that kind of a person. So it's kind of neat.
Have you ever experienced anything that scared you?
Scared me, no. Terrorized me a bit because a murderer came through. And even though they were a different person now, because what made them a murderer died with their body, because it was their brain chemistry that made them murder, they showed me what they did, which bothered me a bit. But I recognized, because they were validating things about who they really were and who they were watching in physical life to learn their new spiritual purpose, because they didn't have the mental disease that they had when they were here. It did frighten me to see what they did, but no spiritual person that came through ever like scared me like a haunted movie, if that's what you're
Well,
asking.
that's fortunate. That's very fortunate. Well, the dog thing would have kind of scared me. If
Why?
someone just, well, I mean, look, if a guy said, I poisoned my dog, that would have taken me aback a little bit.
Well, I mean, if someone can poison a dog, what is he going to do to me? But I just felt so bad for the dog, and I was angry. So,
Mm,
you know, when I meditate, if I'm grieving in my own life, for example, I have to reschedule clients because I can't build my spiritual muscles strong enough to overcome it. And
mm,
if I was feeling anger at the degree that I was feeling at that moment, I wouldn't have served him well anyway. So
sure.
when my emotions, if I can't get my emotions, because we're still physical, so we're going to feel our emotions. But if I
Mm.
can't get my spiritual muscles strong enough to at least give those emotions a black eye or make them a little higher, I can't do a reading for somebody else. So it wasn't frightening with the dog, it was more like anger. How could you do that to a dog? Um, we'll never understand that.
Oh, for sure.
It's like I can't
Hmm.
understand the murder. But the person that I was working with, the griever, um, didn't do the murdering. That was about redemption for that spirit that came through. That even though here they were evil, evil to me doesn't exist in heaven. So,
Well, from my experience, it shouldn't actually exist here either, but that's
oh, it shouldn't
something
exist, but it does. Evil does exist in on Earth. I think when somebody murders somebody, that's
it
evil.
it it does, but I won't get into it right now, maybe at another time. But like I said, shamanistic
No,
visions is different than
oh, of course,
psychic
yeah,
vision. But no, I've it's
yeah.
usually
I think we're just speaking a different language, but
we're
saying the
speaking a
same
different
thing.
language. We're speaking the
Because
same
the
thing.
spirit itself is separate, can be separate from the body. So for when that person came through, they were redeemed because what was evil in their mind physiologically died with their body. That's kind of what they validated, at least in the time that we were together.
So, do you think closure is real for people, or do you think it's kind of a myth
Closure for whom? Those that
for
have
the
passed.
people that you see? For the people that you see looking for to connect to their loved
No,
ones?
grief never goes away. You just learn to manage it. I don't
No.
think grief ever goes away. You can learn to manage it, and I try to encourage clients to become a personal medium, not a professional one, a personal medium through meditation, prayer, or daydreaming, to go to a place where you can build your personal spiritual muscle to have pockets of peace with them. When somebody's in heavy grief, I say you're living in two worlds right now. You just have to decide which one you need to work on. I do believe shamanistic energy can go deeper than that, to create healing, but that's not my forte. My forte is to be a teacher as far as what spirit has taught me. So it's two different functions, beautiful, I think, functions that we have. I think when someone grieving comes to you, you can deal with it differently than I can. I'm not a healer. I say
I
that to people. I am not a healer like you. I'm a
Well, no, you are because people come to you with like who really need some sort of closure,
well, they do, but
and
there's never closure. I don't
but there,
personally believe I can do that for them. Mediumship is, to me, humbly, a different way of choosing what you want to look at, because I've sat with mothers who have lost sons, and they've
Mhm.
come to me after 12 years. And even though they can get more signs now and they can have dreams with their kids, they're still crying because their physical son isn't here. So that's the two world aspect that I say you have to honor your grief. Grief is normal. You can't fix normal. For somebody to feel despair and anger or 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 a loss physiologically, which is separate, in my opinion, than the spirit, you have to go through those motions. You have to experience them. I can sit with a mom, or let's say a woman who has lost a brother, and she'll be crying like a baby, but the brother died 25 years ago. That's repressed grief. She hasn't worked on it at all. So I feel my responsibility to represent spirit is also to understand grief. Physiological grief has nothing to do with spiritual energy. It's the animalistic place that we're in. Science talks about that too. The idea of how the brain works and perceives or receives spirit. You know, we could sit there and say, between here and the wall, I only see a wall, but what's in between? Your mind can't perceive that, but your spirit can receive it.
It does, and you might not be aware of it, but it does give a release to the energetic body. So think of it as when
Yeah,
somebody is able to accept something involving grief, it actually releases and
yeah,
has
they
an effect on their
grieve.
nerves. So
Grieve.
you are
They
healing people.
No, no, but
Spirit is.
you can have a relief. But then you
Mhm.
walk into the supermarket and hear their favorite song, and what happens? The
You get
physio
back to it.
the physiological body receives. To me, healing, and you're the healer, so please correct me. Healing is coming to a place of restoration to
And
something.
restoration, but it's more so about balance. Because when we're balanced, we
Talking the
can
same thing but a different language. Yeah,
exit. Sure, of
yeah.
course.
It's the balance that I'm talking about too.
All right. So far on my show, I've had mostly healers. Um, you're my first medium
Oh,
on Folklore After Dark. What I
thank you.
usually do is when I do a healing, I do it for everyone watching. It even the recording works and goes to everyone.
Nice.
So with you, I want to do something a little different as far as it. I want to give you a chance to demonstrate. And when I work with another healer, I'm able to take their energy and what they're doing and multiply it, and it goes to everyone in attendance. So I was thinking perhaps we can do a trade, and I could work on you a little bit, and perhaps um, well, let's see what I find and see if I can clear something up for you. Would you be willing to do that?
Well, you could do that, but if you do that, I'm not going to be able to do a reading because you'll be bringing up some physical things or some things in my past, and I won't have the time to clear it and meditate.
Then
So,
you go. Then do you want to go first?
well, I didn't meditate to be able to read you.
Oh, okay.
So
Then
I didn't practice what I normally do. So I could attempt it, but I don't know if it would be fair to be able to do that. And um, if you want to set up another opportunity to do that, I'd be happy to.
how
So
how how long do you normally need to meditate to do
I'm
so?
usually 20, 25 minutes.
20, 25 minutes. I
Mhm.
would say, oh, let's do it here, but my energy
I
won't.
wish
That's
I
okay.
could.
It'll
Yeah.
just go.
Plus, I do have a family member in the hospital right now that I have to get to, unfortunately.
All right. Well, we will do a follow up
Yeah, I would love that. I would
and
really
do
love
that.
that, but it would have to, again, this is me being very particular about when I work with someone, I want to be the very best version. And truthfully, I had readings scheduled for this morning, but when I heard about my family member, I had to
Oh
reschedule.
no.
Yeah, no, they're not, there's not, it's not serious, but I need to, this is great that we're talking about this because it's an example of, I think, every medium works differently. Some mediums could have just jumped aboard healing. Yeah, let's go for it. And I'll do reading. But for me, I feel that if I'm going to be the best for my clients and I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
the best for you, I can't have what's on my mind right now. It's not fair,
Yeah.
and
It's
I'm very curious to understand, and I would love the opportunity to sit down with you again and do that exchange because I'm very fascinated with healers and how their ability to bring that type of energy towards a physical body. I'm always curious when, for example, if you look at my business card, it says psychic medium. That's it.
mm-hmm.
But I'm very curious when someone says, I'm a shaman, I'm a psychic medium, I'm a numerologist, I'm a massage therapist, I'm a this, I'm a that. Because I have to tell you, just doing the work that I do, I don't know it all. I never will. And it's very consuming in a good way because I want to be the best that I can for my clients. I can't imagine all of a sudden putting my hands on someone and let's do a Reiki on you. Like what? Like it's overwhelming to me that when you see practitioners that have 8 things on their card. So that's why I admire healers. It's a very noble thing to do, but it's a
Well,
very incredibly energetic ability, you
all
know, to
right.
be able to
So,
do.
all right then. So shall I lead off then?
Did
So take about 5 minutes because I do it for everyone in the show,
okay.
including you. And we, like I said, we usually exchange. And so basically, um, just relax, close your eyes, and is there anything been bothering you pain wise or any nagging aches, anything like that?
You can't pick up on that?
I mean, I asked the person first.
Not really. No, I feel pretty
Okay.
good actually. Yeah.
All right. Let's see. All right. Here we go. So you can hear me speak some Japanese, and this is to everyone else here who has never done this before. While I'm doing that, you're going to feel things move. You may see some things. This is great words of purification, and it goes along those lines. And here we go. Amaterasu mi oyano kami no misu maru no inochi terashi kuni shizuka nari amaterasu mi oyano kami no misu maru no inochi terashi kuni shizuka nari amaterasu mi oyano kami no misu maru no inochi terashi kuni shizuka nari どうその神、アマテラします。せめみ神の身胸を伝えて教え導きの玉わけ。人はすなわち神と神とのもとの主であり、何時らの紳士の痛ましむることなかれ。この故に目にもろもろの風情を見て、心にもろもろの風情を見ず、耳にもろもろの風情に聞いて、心にもろもろの風情を聞かず、口にもろもろの風情を言って、心にもろもろの風情を言わず、身にもろもろの風情に触れて、心にもろもろの風情に触れず、心にもろもろの風情を思とも、中心にもろもろの風情を思わず、この時に清く潔きことあり、もろもろのノリは影と形のことし、清く清ければ汚れることなし、ことをとらばうべからず、皆花よりずの身とはなる。我が身はすなわち六根処女なり、六根処女なるがゆえに、ごぞの真君兄なり、ごぞの真君になるが、 故に天地の神ととなり、天地の神ととなるが、故に万物の霊と体なり、万物の霊と体なるが、故になすところにごて成就せずということなし、無常霊法、真珠仏教、天上無教、名誉入賞、神奈川列、払いたまい、清めたまい、守りたまい、先はいたまい、照らしたまえ、導きたまえ。高間の腹にかむずまります。すめ神たち、いやわらしたも、特殊の水の宝持ちて、あまてる国てるひけ雨のほあかり、くしたま、ねぎはやひのみことに、しずけたもこと教えてのたまわく、いまし、この水の宝持ちて、中つくににあま下り、あうひとぐさ沈め収めよ。あうひとぐさおよび、よりずのものの病のことあらば、かむ宝持ちて、みからいた沈めに起きて、みたま沈めの祭りをなして水の宝をふるべ、そのかむほぎの言葉に曰く、木のい木のと、火のい火のと、土のい土のと、かのいかのと、水のい水のと、ひふみよいむなやこと。二のとふるべゆらゆら、かく祈りせばまかるともさらにきなんとしていも。雨の神の御代や御事のりかけとめて、雨の岩船に乗りて、河内の国の川上の光る画面に天下りましまして、大和の国、引きの山のふもと、白庭の高庭に移しましまして、月祭りとも、名付けて、伊豆の神の狼ともし立て祭り、よよかむ宝を持ちて、よりずのもののために、古べのかむごと持ちて、つかさなしとゆえの古の見た目の神と敬い、立て祭り、すめみことおむらじおとろその神たけきを持ちて、いつきに使い祭りとも、もののびの神のやしろ、雨がした、よりずのもののたごいなり、いでもとかむ宝は、いわゆる、おきつ鏡、平つ鏡、やつくの剣、いく玉、たる玉、まかる返しの玉、ち返しの玉、おろちのひれ、八のひれ、くすくすのもののひれ、さらにとくすの神。木のい木のと、火のい火のと、土のい土のと、かのいかのと、水のい水のと、ひふみよいむなやこと。二のとふるべ、ゆらいとゆら、かし立てまつることのよしをもちて、平らけくきこしめせと、命長く、子孫羽、時はかきわに、守りたまい、先はいたまい、かじ立てまつり、人数寿命しにきかじ、かんながらたまちやませ。かながらたまちやませ。かながらたまちやませ。Inhale deep, everyone. Exhale. All right, and there we have it.
Well, that was intense.
It usually is. How was it? What'd you experience?
Just a lot of warmth around my face for some reason. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Do you know
I don't,
why? Do you? All right.
I don't know what
Very.
it means, but it was just like sunshine on my face or something. Like
So
it
that's
felt
what
warm.
it
Yeah.
is. All right.
Warmth
Cool.
through my neck up.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you, before we go, I want you to talk about meditation a little bit. You just mentioned a little. I always try to bring home how important like these practices are for
Hmm.
anything spiritual. And if you
Yeah.
don't do it, you shouldn't be doing anything else.
That's true. Yeah,
Can you speak about that a little bit?
yeah, I think it's very important, and I tend to get very a little scientific about it only because I feel our brains can be the enemy of any connection because of how we ruminate on things. The brain is always, its function is to keep the physical body safe. And if something doesn't feel safe, the brain will turn itself over and over again to find something to anchor it or feel comfortable. And if you don't have an answer, it creates false scenarios. So you're either living triggered by the past or worrying about the future. I think meditation seats you in the present, and it makes you aware of the invisible essential part of who you are. And that essential part, I mean, no one knows who you are unless you tell them or show them. So if you start meditation, always I always have to have an intention. Why am I meditating? What what is my goal here? Or if there is no goal, why am I trying to separate myself from the earth, the physicality of who I am, so that I can reach deeper, either personally or for a client, or um, just to give grief a black eye for a little while and connect with my mom. Um, there has to be an intention, but we're so physical too. There still has to be a physical of us. So I always call it a pocket of peace. Finding a pocket of peace. Why am I doing it? And being seated in that intention and being true to the truth of who we are. There was a wonderful spiritual lawyer. His name was Peter Gable. Had a big impact in my life, and he wrote a book called The Desire for Mutual Recognition. And he was a brilliant man. He had a law degree at Harvard. He went to school back in the late 60s where all the social movements were happening. And it had a big impact on him as far as how we saw the physical world and how we saw our internal world. And this book really speaks about the false self and the true self. And the true self is what we meditate towards to create a ricochet effect, to really change the world, to take that truth of who we are and try to shift things towards love and connection. And when I meditate, I meditate towards the truth, whatever that truth may be. And to be practiced in that can create a lot of empowerment in the world. Healers change the world. Um, Peter tried to change the world with this philosophical viewpoint, but the idea of meditation to me is seeking some truth because the brain can create a lot of falsehoods. So it's a practice because we are grounded physically here. No matter how much, when somebody dies, spirit showed me that the brain gets weaker, but the spirit gets grander.
Mm-hmm.
We live conversely here. So if we truly want to get to our truth and feel a sense of wholeness, we do have to connect to that truth through meditation or prayer or daydreaming. When some people think meditation, they think I got to be on a mountain with a robe, and so
No,
you don't. So when clients say I can't meditate, well, you daydream. Yes, well, it's a form of meditation. Do you pray? It's a form of meditation. What you did a few moments ago sounded a lot like meditative, prayerful chanting. It just had a melodic
it
prayer.
has a rhythm to it for
Yeah,
sure.
so it's got that depth of prayer to me, or meditation. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. How can people find you?
Well, I do have a website, and I am on social media. My website is my name, angelinadiana.com. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/Angelina Diana. On Instagram, it's Psychic Medium Angelina Diana. All my information is there.
Now, when people come to you to say get a mediumship type reading and they have someone they want to connect with in mind, do they always get to connect to that person, or how does that work?
Not really. Although it seems the majority of people that do come to me connect to that person. But when I sit with someone, I incorporate the spirituality of what brought me to this, but also the science. So I'll sit and briefly explain how I work. And I hope it serves as a mini class for them, that they can see the invisible energy around them through understanding their own spirit. It's a brief, very brief discussion. And then I open up my energy to their loved ones that I feel they already brought to the session. I don't make anybody come through. I'm not that powerful. I just sense energy. But they already have an intention. They're an individual. But at the end of the channeling, when there's been evidence and messages, and I feel my energy kind of come down a bit, I allow the person who came for the session to ask their loved ones direct questions. That somehow, because they have their connection to their loved one's not connected to me, it brings an extra oomph of energy to the session, because now the griever is having a two-way communication. You know, our loved ones have a lot more to say than penny, 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 song on the radio, feather, feather, feather. They have a lot more to say. Can you imagine going to lunch and all I'm saying to you is penny, 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 bird, bird, bird. So our physical brain wants to look for the sign to feel physiological safe. But then we get that sign and we go, was that really you? Because we're operating mind to spirit. But when they operate spirit to spirit, meaning they're taking their spirit and they ask a question and there's a sensitive in the room and there's evidence and messages, I hope that encourages the person to have more conversations with their loved ones. So do they get a chance to talk to their loved ones? Yes. Does the person they expect to come through right away? No. They can show me tertiary, secondary loved ones, but it usually enhances other people there, which can be the loved one that they want to hear from. I did a session yesterday, and the person that they wanted to hear from dominated for an hour. I did a session, I think 2 weeks ago, and the person they wanted to hear from dominated for 5 minutes. But was there evidence and everything that came through? Yes. So I don't have control over your loved ones. I have to honor what spirit has in mind. Just like when that son that came through said, "There's a white dog with me." Uh, you know, people don't understand 100% of the session, but the majority of it they do. And the beautiful gift I think that happens afterwards is there's, I let people record their sessions. It's important. Be wary of mediums that say you can't record.
Ah, yes.
Be very wary, because it's important to document that hour or 90 minutes, whatever it is, because it's a teaching tool. People listen to it and they go, "Oh my God, it makes sense now," or "They said this and it happened." It's quite remarkable. And I think it's
Yeah, those psychic mediums don't want any evidence leaving the room.
yeah, I don't care. I really don't. My
Well,
job,
well,
yeah, my job. I mean, I don't care to be. I want it to be recorded, because to
yeah.
me, it's the truth. It's the reality of how mediums pick up energy. I
Mhm.
once saw. I'll give you a sense of how I get energy. I was doing this session. There were 50 people in the room. It was one of the retreats that the Forever Family Foundation does. And I was drawn, a man made me go to a woman, say, "That's my wife." That's what he said to me, "That's my wife." And I said, "I'm with a woman in I forgot what purple shirt." And she goes, "Yes." I go, I sense that your husband is passed. He said, "That's my wife." And she went, "Yes, my husband is passed." And then he said a couple of things. "Yes, I understand that. Yes, I understand." And then, because these are quick readings at retreats, and I said, "Oh, he loves goldfish. He's showing me a goldfish in a bowl." And she went, "We never had goldfish." And he goes, "Keep on." He goes to me, "Keep on going." And I said, "Tell her what you see." I said, "Well, I'm seeing the color orange from the goldfish. I'm seeing blue around the water. I'm seeing a bowl. And now he's showing me the number 26. And she went, oh, I understand. I go, what is it? She goes, my husband loves the Miami Dolphins. Their uniforms are blue and orange. They play in a bowl. They swim like a fish. And I brought 26 people to go see the Miami Dolphins after he passed.
That's fantastic.
So, but if I didn't record that, that would have
They
been
wouldn't
lost.
have got it.
It would have been lost. So to me, to say don't record is to say I understand everything that
Oh,
your loved ones. I once saw a guy whittling. I'll give you another example. I saw a guy whittling a piece of wood with a knife. This couple, well, I found out later they were a couple. They come to see me. The wife's at the end of her chair, like, I can't wait to be read. The husband's looking around the room like, why the F did, excuse me, but why the F did my wife bring me here? And of course, spirit brings me to him. And I say, sir, I sense your father's around you. She goes, yeah, so what? My dad's dead. What about it? That's what he said to me. I said, well, he's showing me that he's whittling. And he goes, whittling, what's that? And I said, you take a piece of wood to pass time away and you take a knife and you just chuck off the wood. He goes, my dad never whittled. And I said, well, he's doing this. He goes, oh my God, that's my dad. And I said, I thought your dad didn't whittle. He goes, no, but my dad was a proud Connecticut pool champion. He'd chalk his stick off like this, just like you did, blow off the powder just like you did, and looked at me just like you did.
I
Sometimes you see things differently, but you're not off by what you're getting. Recording, you must record a session.
So I've had people come to me often who want to see a medium, but they don't really know where to go because everything they've seen around them, they're able to disseminate right away. Is this person just like asking more questions than telling the person
Yeah, you can't.
stuff?
Yeah.
But still, people get trapped into it, and it's like you said, which is why I mentioned, yeah, of course you want to record. Why they don't want people recording what they're saying because people can scrutinize the recording later
They could.
if it's just all bad information.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that inscrupious type, I guess, psychics do, or parlor psychics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a big difference. I think that everyone who has some type of spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to maybe energy work or even life coaching, should see a medium that is legitimate. And I do want to warn people about one thing. There is something that people do in this type of world, and it's called rubber banding. Are you familiar with the term at all?
No.
So basically, there's a larger percent of psychics that are um, maybe can do tarot cards and use their intuition a lot. That's probably takes up a bigger percentage of people who actually do like the real work or the real service.
Mm-hmm.
But what they could do is cast spells, and they're very good at it.
Yeah.
So what will happen is somebody will approach a psychic in maybe a convention or a dark alley or at a fair or any of these other places, and the psychic medium will tell them, "Hey, you're cursed. Um, I can get rid of it for you, but it's going to cost you $1,500. It's going to
Yeah.
cost you
Yeah.
$2,000."
Yeah.
And the
I've
person
clients that had gone through that.
and the person will be like, "I'm not paying that," and they leave, and they come back, and they're really sick. And they come back to the idea is that they'll come, it doesn't work on everybody. However, it works on some people enough of the time for it to be type of a real way that people make money. So they'll do like a spell. It's the only pretty much really like the only real like talent, if you could call it, that they can do. And the person will get really sick. And the idea is they'll come crawling back and pay anything. And they do
I
that.
don't
And
believe
the
in
person,
spells. I'll tell you how I feel about that. I don't believe in spells. I believe that there are psychics or people that think they're psychics and they prey on the weak.
there's a
And
lot of that. There's a lot of that too. There's a
no,
lot of that too.
I don't believe in
Um,
don't believe in
uh,
curses. Sorry.
don't believe in spells, being
No,
little curses. Oh,
no.
they've come to me before, and hey, I'm sick. This is what happened, and I'm able to, help
Well,
them out of it. So it's a thing.
I believe that you can cure them from sickness, but I believe that those that I first off, I'll say I believe everyone has the ability to be intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, whether or not you're brought to spirit or guides to work with the public, or that's a different story. But we're all intuitive. And I believe that the mind can play tricks on you. And I
Mm-hmm.
believe that because I've had people come to me and tell me there's a curse on me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's a dark energy on me. There's a this, there's a that. Okay. Do bad things happen to good people? Yes. Are there people with a little bit of intuition? Why is it that you say they met up with me in a dark alley? Like that's Hollywood, okay? Or they, or you're at a carnival fair. That's very common. That
Mm-hmm.
there'll be shysters at and they can intuitively pick people that they can sense they're going to get sick with the flu in 2 weeks, or they they have a weakness in their life and I'm going to prey upon them. Because if curses were real, in my humble opinion, if they were real, the amount of people that walked around with darkness, and to me darkness is in the mind, it's in the physiological body, um, and it's an individual journey that you can have and experience. No one, in my humble opinion, when it comes to darkness, can take a physical human and say, I'm cursing you, I have control over you. It's a mind play, it's a mind game, and they're unscrupulously using something beautiful like intuition to twist what they sense is going to happen to that person and make it happen. But convince them that it's happening. I feel very strongly about this because it's my field, and I've gone to a woman. I had a client come to me and she said, so we're going to do the reading. She's going, how much for the chickens? I'm like, excuse me? Don't you have to have me purchase 2 chickens and cut their head off so I have good luck? And I'm like, absolutely not. She's going, well, that's what the last psychic did. I go, well, if it was so successful, why aren't you going back? She goes, she didn't help me. She even put a curse on me, and that's why I'm here. I'm afraid. I go, 2 seconds ago, you said she didn't help you. So what makes you think she could put a curse on you? I knocked on that woman's door. I went to her house. I said, I need to talk to you. Aren't you here for a session? I go, I'll pay you for your time. The initial session was $25. I was going to sit
Mm.
there, pretend and see what she's, but I already knew what she's going to do, and that would have been dishonest of me. And I said, I'm here to have a talk with you. And I scared her enough. She goes, I really can't curse people. I'm be good to a fellow practitioner. I'm like, you're not helping anybody. I don't believe in curses. I believe in the spirit and its ability to heal thyself. Don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm
So
like, I'm not actually killing anything. I'm actually removing stuff to
thank
let the
you.
body heal itself.
Correct.
But that's
Correct.
the
And that's the
but l-
physiological brain and body, in my
but
opinion.
it's the energy body first. The energy body, when things get lodged into it, have to be pulled out, and they could be all sorts of
Well,
different
we're of
things.
it. We're of a different thing there. I don't believe. I believe evil lives in the heart, the physical heart of men, and what they do on this planet. And when somebody dies, the evil dies, and then there's a pure spirit. And I thought that healers worked with the pure spirit spirit to spirit, but I'm not going to step on your toes.
No, well,
We just
we absolutely do, absolutely do. What I'm so The idea is that the energetic body has impurities within it that affect the physical body, and it
mm,
also affects our
the spirit
thinking.
is pure, and the spirit lives love, patience, kindness, forgiveness, self control, joy, happiness. In the physiological brain is fear, worry, fret, the inability to forgive, jealousy. Um, Can a brain convince that your spirit is impure? Sure. But what do we use to combat evil? It's the pure spirit. So it's just a different philosophical viewpoint. I don't know it all. I only work with people that have transitioned over and
Mm.
are of pure spirit. I don't work healing bodies, but I am very angry. Apparently, you can see my anger with practitioners who use the ability to be intuitive to prey upon weak people.
It's really awful,
It's
and they
awful,
do it,
and it
and
angers me.
we can agree on that.
Yeah,
Whatever type of methods that they
yeah,
use,
yeah.
it's really
Horrible.
bad.
It's
And
horrible.
I always try to talk about it with people so they could kind of get the idea that they don't have to always run into that just because
Right,
it's the sort of
right,
thing so prevalent.
right.
You see it with healers too.
Horrible.
Like
It's horrible.
in like I was in Los Angeles for a long time. We're about to wrap up. I don't want to keep you. I know that you need to go for a
Yeah,
long
yeah,
time. And
yeah,
because I could do what I can do, other healers wouldn't refer me to their clients that they know I can help.
yep.
And I know I can help because they don't want to lose the customer. And some of these folks are really, really suffering with
It's
sickness and
horrible.
a lot of other stuff.
That's
Yeah,
horrible.
it kind of beats me
Horrible.
up.
Yeah, it's
So,
horrible. I get very angry about it and want to protect, you know, mediumship and psychic work, because most people think of, you know, put two candles in the refrigerator, you'll freeze out your enemy. Like what? And what? Putting candles in a refrigerator? Yeah. How much are the candles? $2,000. They're special candle. What? Like it's a physical fear that you're putting in someone who's already beaten up from life, had some tough breaks, and they're able to intuitively sense that and take advantage of that person. My heart just goes out to people that are taken advantage of. I'm very angry about that, as you can see my reaction. But it's only because I do believe in the human spirit. And I believe that that true self that Peter Gable talks about, that Martin Buber, the great philosopher, talks about, the I and the thou. That the I is your ego and how you perceive yourself in the world, and how you get disappointments in the world and you get stepped on in the world, and you can make that your identity, or you can take the pure spirit, which until somebody's hurt or they've been victimized, they can show love and caring and peace and contentment and joy and happiness. We have to strive towards that. This earth is in trouble. We're in trouble on this earth right now. Mother Earth is not happy. And we really do have to work from the gifts of the Spirit, or the thou, or the true self. And when we see injustice, there's four soul groups: healers, philosophers, teachers, and advocates. You can have
mhm.
those qualities, but I feel like you're brought to a certain soul group for a reason. And when you have someone who's a healer naturally, like yourself, or a teacher, or someone who's an advocate who can look at someone who's victimized and do good, or you could take a hurting person, like someone who thinks they're a medium or a psychic, and do evil because their mind is twisted, and they bring that client into that twisted world. To me, folks like you and I really have to build up how good the spirit can be. And I'm hoping that we can all build that up in this earth, because we desperately need it, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So, Angelina, thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
So, I think the stories like yours and the before mentioned Piper, who was not a medium but had mediumistic ability, perhaps,
Right.
never stopped being relevant because people still grieve. They need
Yeah,
some type of closure, even though they might not get it 100%.
a pocket.
Believe me, it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see the energetic bodies differently.
And that's okay.
But you are doing more than you think you are as
I
far
like
as a
to
person
I
else.
give them pockets of peace, moments where they can actually feel their loved ones around them, and I feel like spirit has brought me to teach people how to do it for themselves on a in a personal level. You know, that they can take moments to sense their loved ones around them, because I do anything to have my mother walk through the door right now. It's not going to happen, but I work every day when I can to feel my mother's presence because I miss her very much. But I still cry
Oh,
for her. But I still cry for her. I
and
cry.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's normal. So I live in two worlds right now, and that's okay too. And I try to give that hope to clients that it's okay to say I live in two worlds right now. Sometimes I'm going to sit with my loved one in spirit because they sit with us. They do their life review through us. You know, so if we can sit with them too, so it's a two-way communication. I think we're being a personal medium at that moment. And I want to give everyone that hope that they can do that. Um, you know, do they want to do what I do for a living? Oh my goodness, it's not easy work. You have to have discipline and you have to have a passion for it, and you want to protect the process that you've worked so hard in, that agreement that you have with spirit. It's an agreement you enter into. I told my guides, if I'm not helping people, I'm not staying in it. And that I
Mhm.
stick firm with that because I'm working with people's emotions and their life and their heart, their spiritual heart. So I'm hopeful that whomever is hurting out there with your work, that they have that pocket of peace too, and that healing that you give. Um, you know, and I understand why I felt sunshine on my face. We've had 2 feet of snow and 7-degree weather. You know, you were giving me the healing that I've been asking for. You know, that makes
that's
perfect sense to me. You
that's
know.
what I was gonna say. I was like, how I was gonna ask you, well, how cold is it there? And then I remembered, oh, you already
Oh
said
yeah,
that you're
yeah. I mean, I understand why I got the sunshine. I've been, you know, I'm not. I've been a New Englander all my life, but I've been wanting to move to Florida. You know, so I got.
well, perhaps that might be a sign that that might be what you need to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. Who knows? But I
Who
understand.
knows?
But I understand why I got the sunshine. It's what
All
I
right,
need.
good.
What I needed at that moment, and that's what a
A-
healer does, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, tonight you gave this subject something that it needs, and that's type of calm ethics, an explanation of how this process works and what to look for when people are looking for someone who can connect them with their departed loved ones.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to thank you for being here.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, and continue
Absolutely.
to do the work that you do.
And I will see you again.
I will look forward to that, and I'll be prepared next time.
All right. Well, you were prepared this time.
Well, I mean, as far
And
as turning the favor and
oh,
being able to do a reading for you, I want to be prepared for that. As far as meditate, being
well,
meditated.
I'm so sorry to put that on you too. I like these conversations to be type of um, natural. I don't like to rehearse any of this. I don't
That's good.
really write down my own questions. I just like to have the conversations take their course. You'll
That's great.
never see any editing. Like this is going to be the episode.
That's
It's
great.
going to be out there and it's done. And that's my goal.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for doing the work that you do.
Well, thank you so much. And this has been Folklore After Dark.